All right, you guys, welcome back to the channel once more. Smash the subscribe button. We have some things to talk about. America, we have a problem. Making it in America feels impossible, right? Especially if you live in top tier cities, major cities, cities with all the money, cities with all the tech jobs. Well, we're not going to move out to the desert just because it's cheaper. But let's take a deep dive, NBC style. Let's check out the clip.
This is a mock monthly household budget for an American family in 1985. If we compare that to a hypothetical budget in 2022, we can see that most expenses scaled with inflation, with a few exceptions.
Damn. So rent and energy, $970 in 1985, right before I was born. So, ooh-wee. So just alone now, well, not even now, a few years ago, it's more than that. So you're spending over $1,400 a month, rent, energy combined. Food, wow, food didn't really change that much. Interesting. Childcare, that was always expensive. Healthcare, that was always expensive. Apparel, wow, that went down actually. Wow. Wow.
Rent, out-of-pocket healthcare costs, and childcare are notably more expensive in 2022, even when accounting for inflation. And costs associated with retirement increased by more than 60%. But these numbers are not accounting for a big X factor: consumer debt, such as credit cards and student loans. Total outstanding consumer credit was nearly $600 billion in December 1985. By 2022, it was nearly $4.9 trillion.
Damn. In a 40-year span. Well, every year everything goes up. Gas prices go up, the rent goes up, utilities go up. Just walking outside your front door got even more expensive. We're not even going to talk about the grocery store prices. That's ridiculous. And I'm talking about regular grocery shopping. I'm not talking about Whole Foods and Sprouts shopping. I'm talking about your general average everyday grocery store.
Debt has been rising over time. Student loans.
She cute. The grades is coming in, but I still let her in the front door.
Weren't really a thing for baby boomers.
Millennials have larger student loan balances, bigger mortgages, much bigger car payments than their parents did a generation ago. In addition to more expensive childcare costs, higher prices pretty much across the board. So that does make it more difficult to set extra money aside or make any long-term plans.
And that's the thing. A lot of you are not saving money. That's almost non-existent, especially if you're working a 9 to 5. But if you are, you got to remember, a lot of people 30 plus are still living at home with their parents or some kind of relative, or 5 roommates in a 2-3 bedroom apartment. And these are the people that could afford to go on luxury vacations, buy avocado toast. This is I call this the soft liberal latte generation. Because people are just too damn soft now. It's irritating.
We're living in two separate economies. The American dream that was pitched to the Gen Xers and the Boomers is no longer present in today's world.
Yeah, you can kiss this lifestyle goodbye. This is the Dink generation. Dinks don't want this. They want high tower, luxury level apartments overlooking the city. Lake, forest, whatever.
A lot of people, particularly the working class and the part of the middle class, don't think their children will be as well off as they were. That's a problem.
Many people live in what I describe as at break even. Over the course of the year, they might make enough money to pay for basic living expenses and cover their bills. But if one major thing happens, then they can get behind.
Here's why young American adults are struggling to make ends meet, and what can be done. Millennials' net worth quadrupled from $3.9 trillion to nearly $16 trillion between 2019 and 2024, but more than half report living paycheck to paycheck.
No kidding. Because that paycheck to paycheck job is going to pay them more money than any side hustle. A lot of people have side hustles, but it's not enough to replace their 9 to 5. And then why would you replace your 9 to 5 if you don't have any medical coverage with your side hustle? So everybody thinks they want to be entrepreneurs, which a lot of them are going to fail, and they don't make enough money to have medical insurance in case something happens. You walk outside and bust your big ass head. How are you going to cover that? Oh yeah, that's right, credit card, if you even have enough on your credit card. But really that's not enough. So you'll get billed later on for it. The ambulance ride and everything else. The ambulance ride itself is thousands of dollars before anything else. So a lot of you are just shit out of luck.
A lot in this group have benefited from a strong jobs market and rising wages. And during the pandemic, many people bought a home. That made a lot of people wealthier, but more on paper. The disconnect between being rich on paper and feeling well off has been referred to as phantom wealth. Your net worth has gotten greater, but you're not feeling richer necessarily.
Because you're spending more money. The more you take on, the more money you're going to spend as you get those raises and everything. So kind of feel like it's like taking 4 steps forward and 2 back. Like you're not really getting as far ahead as you think you are. So the best way to save money is to live with family and not have a car note. That's the only way you're really going to get ahead. But then they're telling people not to buy new cars. And a car is going to keep you poor. But they're not telling people not to get married and not to have kids though. That's going to set you back too, especially if it doesn't work out. Who's going to pay for child support and child care? The average person can't pay rent, child support, and pay for child care. Let that sink in.
It's taking young adults longer than their parents to meet some milestones, such as living on their own, buying property, and starting a family.
It's a lot harder for young people today to save up for markers of the American dream than it was for previous generations. When we look at home buying, as we all know, we're in historically tight housing markets. There are very few homes on the market, and those that are on the market are extremely expensive, not to mention expensive mortgage rates. And the prices of homes has escalated over the last few decades much faster than actual incomes.
And see, these are nice homes. Do you know how unaffordable this is in California? You can save all the money you want to, but then it's funny. They're telling everybody to save money, save up for a mortgage. So you done spent your life savings into a house you're going to be a slave for. So now you have this mortgage and this so-called beautiful house, but you don't have any money for anything else. You're a paycheck away from being homeless, so you still have the same problem versus when you was renting that 1-bedroom apartment.
It is actually much harder for a millennial or a Gen Z to save up for a down payment to buy a home.
It's not the overspending, it's the cost of living.
I think the middle class, unfortunately, is dead for millennials.
This is the type of person that has 4 or 5 roommates. He's saving money. But you're going to spend the money on something. Luxury excursions. A lot of you guys are blowing a lot of money on these vacations you never had money for in the first place. Y'all pimping out that credit card. That's another thing. Most people, we think, oh, where'd you get money from? No, credit, loans, all that stuff. Family business accounts. A lot of people that go on these vacations are not using money they saved up for or worked hard for. It's borrowed money.
Gen Zers, or best case scenario, the goalpost has just moved and it's still obtainable, but you have to make over 6 figures to have that middle class life. But people who are older were in a better economic time growing up, because the big difference is what I call the big 3. Millennials and Gen Zers are faced with outrageous housing prices, whether it's rent or owning, massive monthly college student loan debt payments, and daycare.
And I'm thankful to not have that student loan debt, because when I was in school, I was going for criminal justice, but I ended up in healthcare. I just felt like it was a waste of time. But I'm still better off than the average person, luckily.
Freddie Smith made a career shift from actor to realtor and started making content about the state of the housing market.
In the summer of 2023, I was maybe one of the first or the handful that was able to say, hey, the housing prices hit 420, the interest rate's at 7%. You now need $120,000 to qualify for a home.
And the old American dream is dead. The problem is, the average person makes less than half $120,000 a year. The average person only makes about $60K a year before taxes. So you're gonna need a second or third person to lean on to get in that house. And not only that, you need co-signers. And a lot of people aren't gonna co-sign for you because their credit is fucked up as it is.
And it went viral. And then it just bled into people asking comments and me making more videos. Then it got into the boomer versus millennial debate, and it just kind of continued to grow from there, and it took its own shape. I had to rebuild my life in my early 30s, so I'm really relating to the 22-year-olds who are building their life, and it's a totally different economy than when I built mine when I was 19.
Not being able to save for a home has big retirement implications for millennials and Gen Z.
Those who don't own homes, now those are people who are in real trouble. They're trying to save to get their own place. They're paying high rent somewhere. They're commuting a long distance or trying to work at home so they can save on childcare or so they can save just on housing costs.
Well, if you're working from home, that benefits people that have children, so then they don't have to pay for child care, right? And then if they need diapers and groceries and everything, they can have it delivered to them. So some of this stuff actually benefits the younger population. But DoorDash and everything, that stuff gets expensive over a while. You have to pay all those fees and stuff. You're better off just going to the store to pick it up yourself. But like I said, being that there's a lot of single mothers and everything now, this benefits them, especially if they can work from home. But if you're like some kind of nurse or something where you actually have to be present in a building, these services really don't work out that much. And people that teach, it might work for them, but yeah.
Those living patterns are increasingly what's happening for younger workers.
In the 1980s, the typical first-time homebuyer was in their late 20s. With a 30-year mortgage, that would mean they owned their home outright by the time they retired in their 60s, providing them with a better chance at sticking to a fixed income in their retirement. A national housing shortage, high rent prices, and competition from wealthier buyers are all making it harder for young adults to buy their first home.
Yeah, that's another reason. See, the problem is everybody is trying to finance everything. So in the housing market, that doesn't really cut it, especially if you're in a high competition area like the Bay Area. Everybody loves California and they love the Bay Area. Well, I'm not speaking for everybody, but people that are like tech and everything, the tech bros, they love the Bay Area. Especially if you've been here your whole life, for somebody like me. So I don't want to leave the Bay Area. I'm still a renter. I'm in my late 30s. And I'm pretty much a dink, but whatever. So if you try to qualify to buy a home, you're going to get priced out by cash buyers because people are using organizations and businesses to buy these homes. And then they become corporate landlords and they rent them out. So it's all a bunch of bullshit. Why do you think you have all these digital nomads that are living abroad in those luxury apartments or even buy foreign real estate? They don't want to deal with the bullshit here in America. So they move to Thailand, they move to Philippines, they move to Vietnam because they don't have to they don't have to be slaves to own shit or rent.
In 2024, the median first-time homebuyer was 38 years old, an all-time high.
You have a lot of people 25 to 34 who are looking to start a family and cannot find a home for their families. Maybe the homes aren't where they want them to be inside the city, but even outside a city, it's been very difficult for young families to find a place.
Yeah, and you have to remember, so now the argument is millennials think that they're entitled to live in these expensive cities, New York, San Francisco, Los Angeles. Well, this is where these cities you're going to make the most money, especially if you're working for somebody. If you're working for an organization, you have to live in those areas to get that big push. If you want to make over $100K a year, your best chances are living in these areas with 5 or 10 roommates. Not unless you have a lot of family in the area and you have a lot of boomers that owned their homes before everything got real crazy. You're fortunate, but you're telling me to move 100 miles out just because it's cheaper, but now I have to commute. How am I going to get to work? I have to sit in traffic 4 hours every day just getting to work. Nobody wants to do that.
It's healthy for us to try to find different ways that maybe home ownership doesn't have to be the symbol of the American dream. But then to counter that, on my own point, I encourage those who can afford homes to buy it, because once it's paid off, you're going to have a more comfortable retirement because you're not going to be subject to the ever-increasing rent prices.
Many Americans are navigating a new kind of economic instability, which traditional financial advice may not prepare them for. Rachel Schneider co-authored the book, The Financial Diaries, with NYU professor Jonathan Mordock. They spent a year tracking the granular spending habits of 235 families.
What we saw was a huge amount of volatility. That was our core finding. The majority of Americans work hourly jobs. And so for them, the amount of money that they earn fluctuates week by week. I get 30 hours this week. versus 45 hours next week. And so as a result, income is really up and down over the course of a month.
Yeah, I know how that is because I work in healthcare. In the hospital, I work in intensive care. So, I mean, just anywhere throughout the hospital, the hours really pretty much vary. It depends on how short staff or how full or overstaffed they are to pretty much get hours. And a lot of people are too lazy to do overtime. Either they feel it's not worth it or they just don't want to give up all their free time. But when they offer you the overtime, you better take it, especially on the weekends, because everybody thinks they're entitled to have the weekends off. I work every other weekend. Sometimes I don't mind being there on the weekends. The weekends could be just as busy as the weekdays. The only difference is you don't have all the administrative people there. But like I said, hours vary.
And that flies in the face of all of the budgeting advice we usually give people.
There's a difference between surviving and thriving. And I just think if we're going to claim that we're the richest country, the best country in the world, why isn't everyone who's working 40 hours, 50 hours a week thriving?
And that's not even enough just for if you're by yourself. 40 hours a week ain't enough sometimes, depending on your hourly pay. But you have to think, you're going to spend most of your money on food and gas. Whether you're dining out a lot or the grocery store. The grocery store is just as expensive as eating out, almost. When you go out to eat, you're going to pay at least $20 to $30 for a plate of food. Versus if you buy the same ingredients in the store, you're going to spend about $40, $50. You just have to find time to cook those ingredients.
Is that possible?
On top of income instability, cost of living is increasingly unstable.
Tariffs have added a lot of uncertainty into future economic conditions. We don't really know how this is going to play out just yet. And if people start to feel nervous about what lies ahead, then they may dial back on things like consumer spending.
The tariffs are creating uncertainty for those people. They don't know what to do. Businesses aren't hiring more people. They're just waiting to see they have a stable business environment they can go. Without stability, they can't. At the same time, the tariffs are going to create a big sales tax on lower income people who spend more on the basics, which are going to go up. And so that's going to create problems for them too.
What the historians tell us that every single new generation gets complaints from the older generation.
This is the life everybody wants to live. A soft luxury lifestyle. Sex in the city. Cute girls, cute girls. You know, we all want to have a good time every day. Every day ain't gonna be Christmas, but this takes away, this is like a high to take away from all the problems we have in our lives. All three of those girls have some kind of financial issue. I'm not saying that because they're women. I'm just saying in general, there's some kind of struggle in the background. But this Kodak moment right here hides all that. And luckily, we could find ways to distract ourselves from the struggles temporarily. I mean, it's either this or drugs and alcohol, right? Or a luxury vacation. Put on the American Express.
About how they're behaving irresponsibly, immorally, blaming millennials for spending too much on avocado toast.
It's not student loans or a tough job market keeping millennials from buying homes. It's reportedly avocado toast.
The one piece of advice for young people out there who are spending their money on avocado toast and don't have any goals, what would you say to them?
I would say to them, get as much pleasure out of saving as you do spending.
This kind of advice is usually framed as a warning against lifestyle growth.
Yeah. This plate of avocado toast with a side of bacon, I could tell this is about $10 right there. And then the latte on the side is about another $6, $7. So you done spent all in all almost $20 just for this meal right here with the coffee. Ridiculous. But then how ridiculous is it? You can't even get a tank of gas for $20. Maybe $45, $50. It takes my car about $60 to fill up. And I have a V6 engine, twin turbo.
Which is the idea that as people earn more, they suddenly start to spend more, and that's what prevents them from properly saving.
I think that's why there's so much confusion, because you can point to a millennial who spends $1,200 on DoorDash. Not good. But you can also point to a millennial who's very financially conscious, making $80,000, and is drowning in debt, and is living with a roommate, and is a lawyer.
How are you making $80,000 a year and you have a roommate and you're struggling in debt, other than student loan? See, that's the problem. These college degrees, people are still, their first jobs, they're expecting to make about 6 figures. But you have to remember, there's so much more competition than you. You have to know people. Like if you're trying to really get out there and make the most pay, you have to know people. You might even have to be a concubine.
29 years old. That is not right if someone got straight A's in school, straight A's in college, got a bachelor's, got a master's degree, and is 29 making $80,000 and can't even get their own apartment, let alone purchase a house or have financial stability. So
why do you think there's so many sugar babies, OnlyFans girls, escorts? It serves a purpose. It's all to get ahead. Most of them girls don't want to do that shit, but it's the fast life and it's access to fast money. I'm not saying it's right and I'm not saying it's wrong, but baby girl, do your thing.
That's where I think there's something broken in the system.
Even though households have become significantly wealthier, many consumer goods are also a lot more expensive. And at the same time, Americans are now largely on their own when it comes to things like insurance, retirement savings, healthcare. That makes it harder just across the board to feel financially secure. In some ways, Americans are even more financially vulnerable now. Even as prices have come up significantly, consumer spending hasn't really changed that much. And that leaves more Americans relying on things like credit cards to kind of make ends meet at the end of the month. With economists now forecasting a possible recession in the months or year ahead, there's a greater chance that many Americans won't be prepared for an economic shock.
There aren't so many people in the middle class. There's a big working class. Those are people who helped elect the president, who want stable jobs, who want rising wages, who want to be able to do things for their family and improve life for their kids that they don't feel they can do now. But those people haven't seen much respite.
The core kernel of wisdom in the avocado toast issue is make choices about what really matters to you. You spend money on stuff that will be of value to you. Also, good advice is create a savings habit. Unfortunately, the way that ends up getting translated to people is you should set aside 6 months of earnings in case of an emergency. And most people are like, yeah, that's impossible. That's impossible. It's a huge amount of money. And so what people then take from that is, I guess I can't save.
So I always encourage people, once you do get that promotion, just stay where you're at for a while and just accumulate money, even for just a year. Maybe buy yourself something nice, but just keep that money for a little while and just enjoy the freedom. Because all of a sudden you're not as fearful at work because you got a little cushion.
There are more ways today to upskill than there have ever been before. I mean, there's online classes, certification programs, even, online degrees. So it is easier today to make yourself more competitive in the job market, which will help if you do feel like your job or job security isn't what it used to be.
There's a societal need here, and some of that is about embracing and understanding that if you are struggling financially, it is not your fault. People often feel a lot of shame and distress when their financial lives are not going smoothly.
I mean, things aren't going to always go your way, and there's going to be a point in your life to where financially you're struggling. A lot of times that's temporary. But just don't do no stupid shit when you do hit that point.
Yet a lot of what they're experiencing is not the result of anything that they have done or could have done differently. It is the result of choices we as a society are making. And can we make those choices in a way that will allow me to be financially stable and upwardly mobile? And then I also think the reality is that societal change is slow, and any one individual does have to make their financial life work as best they can in this moment. We're going to see people cohabitating with friends for longer and coming up with creative ways to share childcare across families, because that's what it's going to take to make it work. And actually, we're going to see, I think, some real benefits in community that could come out of that. So to look for the silver lining of, okay, I might not be able to be as independently financially stable, but what does that mean for the interconnections I can and should create with other people?
Wow, that's interesting. That was an interesting clip. Well, there's not much to say to that. And then things are always going to get worse before they get better, right? Only time will tell. Hopefully you enjoyed this clip. This is Kai the Veil. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next videos. Peace.